in my opinion, their code is a little bloated. You get a lot of classes that you don't need, and I don't know, it's a little messy, but it's a good starting point. And Bootstrap looks better than nothing in a lot of cases, so I guess it depends on what you use it for. But anyway, we can kind of go through these files and I'll explain what we have here. So if you open index.html, I've added some things that weren't here last week. We have this doc type here at the top. That's something that you have to have on, that you want on all of your HTML pages. It used to be really long, but they've made it so it's really short now. It used to be like all the way out to here and had a whole bunch of different versions. But now you can just use this nice short one on everything.
Is that a shorthand for HTML5 then?
Okay. Yep. So lines 4 through 8 are just metadata for the most part, not super important. And then I've kind of sorted the information that we have here in the head. We have the favicon, which is that little icon that appears when you save something as a favorite. And it will go right up here.
It appears in the tab.
Yep, appears in the tab, and if you save as a favorite, it will add this little icon here. There actually isn't a favicon yet. We can add that later. It just links to the image in the image folder. So it could be a PNG. Sometimes it's a .ico, ICO, but PNGs work as well.
How does it know it's a favicon?
Because of this right here where you say rel shortcut icon. That's what kind of distinguishes it. Below this, we have a link to a font. I just used one from Google Fonts, so it's free and it'll work anywhere, called Open Sans. And then we have our links to our style sheet. So we have 3 here. You could have them all in one if you wanted to. This kind of makes it a little more organized. The first one is reset. So last week we kind of mentioned how internet browsers by default set some styles, which is dumb. So this kind of resets it. This is a popular CSS reset by Eric Meyer that's used pretty frequently. I think Bootstrap either did or does use this, or a variation of this. So what this is just resets some basic styles. So the margin, 0. By default, websites will have this 10 pixel margin on around the whole border, and so this resets it. There's a couple other things. Basically, this file you can ignore. It's just good to have in it. And then we're linking to our style.css, which has all of the main styles, and then responsive, which doesn't have anything yet, but we're going to fill in. And then we're linking to some JavaScript. So first one is the jQuery library, which will allow these next 2 JavaScripts to work. One is that scroll page, which I'll demo right now. So if we click one of these links, we have that smooth scrolling effect. Last time we were missing jQuery, but now we have it, so it works. The second effect is this menu, which we'll get to later. This is for our mobile menu. So if you scroll down, I've coded out each of the sections. They're kind of separated by sections. So for example, this header is this whole white bar right here. There's this mobile menu, which is actually hidden right now. We'll come back to that later. The call to action is this section. About is really long because there's a lot of content. And that is this whole section with these 3 paragraphs. And then team is fairly simple, this section. Loan types here. And then quest alone, and we have the footer, which are here and here. So fairly straightforward. And then at the very bottom, we have all this gibberish. This is basically to help Internet Explorer users. The top, let's see, the top couple lines here, 2 lines are, it's called the HTML5 shim. So there's some HTML5 tags, which we actually haven't used yet. But if you wanted to use like header, footer, section, and so forth, this helps Internet Explorer render those. And then below that, it's a prompt for Internet 6 users and 7 users to install Google Chrome Frame. Which is a much better option than having to write custom CSS to make our websites work on those browsers. In some cases, depending on the project, you can't get away with Google Chrome Frame. You have to actually write custom CSS to make websites work on Internet Explorer 6 and 7, and that is probably the worst possible thing you could ever do. It sucks. So whenever we can, we just ignore those and use this Google Chrome frame. So any questions real quick on what we have here before we move on?
Would you put this part in every page on the site?
This stuff right here?
Yeah.
Unfortunately. If you wanted to make it a little bit cleaner, you could use a PHP include and just have one.
That in there.
Yeah. But then all of your files would have to be.
So we have to comment that out in the final page.
Comment what out?
All the Internet Explorer stuff.
No, it's commented out right now by default, and it works somehow. I don't know how it works, but it does.
Magic.
Yeah, magic is probably how it works. Yeah, it's a great question. If we have Google Analytics installed, I typically would put it down here at the bottom so it loads last, so it's not slowing down pages. Sometimes, if I have a lot of JavaScripts, I'll just copy this whole section and put it at the bottom if I want those to load last. These are super lightweight, so it's not a big deal. We can take a look at those a little bit later. So let's hop over to styles.css. You can see I've kind of organized this in the same structure. Each little section corresponds to the section on the website, except for this top one is global. They're kind of just general classes. A lot of these attributes we went over last week, maybe not all of them, but we'll dig into these a little bit when we manipulate them in our responsive code. So any questions here that kind of pop out to you just by looking at this file?
So it looks like you like absolute pixel size.
Yeah, and that depends on the project. Sometimes if you want the site to be more fluid, you could use percentages a lot more. With this particular site, we didn't need to. And the main reason is because all of the content fits in this container class that we've used over and over, which is 960 pixels wide and centered. So everything fits within that 960 pixel container, which we've used over and over. So if we zoomed out, everything's still going to be centered.
Gotcha.
Whereas if we had a more fluid site that stretched from border to border, then we'd use percentages a lot more. So, however, with the responsive changes we're going to add, we will use percentages more than absolute pixels.
Gotcha.
So, any other questions with the CSS file? Any attributes that you don't recognize that you want to know what they need? Okay.
What's above?
What was that?
Above?
Where is that at?
Well, go left.
Oh, float left?
No, about.
Oh, about. Where did we have that? Okay, so this corresponds to this white section right here with the three kind of about paragraphs.
Oh, that's okay.
Yep. Okay, so without further ado, let's see how this looks on responsive right now. Not very good. Oh, if I can get this plugin to work. There we go. Okay, so tablet landscape, it works fine. That's part of the reason you can see why we chose the 960 pixel width, because by default on most larger tablets it will render fine, in landscape view at least. However, if we switch over to portrait, that's when we start running into problems. It's too wide.
Good question.
Where
do you get that program? I want it now.
Great question. Yeah, that's awesome. I always forget the name of the site. It's a French site, so I always Google French responsive bookmarklet, and it usually comes up. Yep, second result, responsive.victorcoulon.fr.
Responsive Victor Coular.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. And then you just drag that bookmarklet to your bookmarks folder bar, whatever you want. Yeah, it's an awesome plugin. On any site, you just click on it, and then you can kind of see these different views. So, phone, landscape, nightmare, not even usable, and phone, portrait, same thing. So, we want it to look good on all three of these smaller views that it doesn't look good on. Part of the challenge with responsive is that there's so many different view sizes, especially when you factor in Android. So ideally, we don't want to stick to any particular device. We just kind of want a rough size range that will make it look good on any tablet, regardless of what the width is. So let's open the responsive.css file, and you can see I've set up a couple different parameters here. This first one is for tablets and below. So anything that we put here will affect tablet sizes and phone sizes. If we want anything to affect just phones, we would put it down here below. For the max width, I put 768. We could go higher. We could say 960, and we'd be fine. Because this is at 960 right now. Or actually, this is 1024. So you could put 1023 if you want to affect everything that's smaller than a typical desktop. And that's actually a safe route to go. Since we're trying to design this device agnostic, this number isn't super important as long as it's somewhere between 1023 and bigger than a phone. So I'll just put 1,000 here for now. Phones, this could be kind of a variable number too. Does anyone have a big Android phone?
Yeah.
What's the screen resolution on it? Do you know? Or,
Fascinating question that I didn't really answer.
okay.
Ginormous volume, bigger than my palm.
Yeah. So for frame of reference, iPhones are 320. Technically the resolution is 640 width, but the Retina and I think Androids are the same way. Where I think they have resolutions of 1024 width, but you would cut that in half. So we could set this anywhere from 320 to maybe even like 550. Or if it's 1024, half of that is 514. Is that right? For 512. Yeah, we could put 512 and be fine.
How much is 720?
What is it?
720.
720. Okay, so 720 divided by 2, 360. This isn't super important, and we'll change this number later so you can kind of see where this comes to effect. If we want to simulate that here, we can take this out of full screen, and if you right-click in Chrome, and I think this works in Firefox too, when you're in Inspect Element, in the top right corner, it will show you the pixels, the dimensions of the size. You can kind of see that changing up there in that top right corner. So those numbers are saying once we hit that browser width, change the layout to whatever our CSS changes are. So in our case, we have one breakpoint at 1,000, one at 360. So as soon as we add classes here, as soon as this hits 1,000 or below, then those changes will come into effect. One thing to keep in mind, the reason this was at 768 instead of 1,000 before, is some desktop browsers, their screen resolution is 1024 or bigger, but they might not have their internet browser at full screen. They might browse at like this width, for example, which is why sometimes it's better to make it a little bit lower. That way, 768 will fit tablets, but few people browse with their browser like about this size. So those are numbers you can play with and kind of decide what the best route is to go. So any questions on that so far? One thing to keep in mind, we have this set at max width. You can change this to min width if you wanted to. We can also add min and max. So for example, we could have min width 361 pixels and max width 768. That way we're only targeting browsers that are between those two. I used to do this for everything, so like I had a specific setup for iPad tablet, iPad portrait, iPhone portrait, iPhone landscape. But I think just using max width is a lot cleaner, and that way we know everything in here is going to affect tablets and phones, and any classes that we need to affect only phones we'll add right here. So there's different routes that you can go. We could also do one of these at a min width of like 1024 and then we can change the classes for larger browser sizes. So if somebody's on a really big monitor, we can change the size to adapt to them better. For this particular example, we're just going to do tablet and phone. So let's start changing some classes here. I'm actually going to not use the plugin so that we can do this kind of faster. So first things first, at this width, our navigation is too wide. We have a couple options. We could either make this whole navigation bar go down further and center the logo and put the navigation below, or we can collapse the navigation and add a menu button. Let's do both, and then you can keep whichever one you like best. So we'll start with a larger navigation bar, center the logo, and make the navigation centered below that. So first steps first, we want to change the header class. Right now, if we reference this, oh, it's an ID. Its height is 110. We want to double that. So height 220. So if we save that, refresh our site, it's not working. Why is it not working?
It's just increasing the height, not actually cascading downwards.
Yeah, but that should work. Let's see here. Maybe I don't have this. Oh, there we go. I just didn't have it collapsed enough. Okay, so see how that worked? As soon as I hit this breakpoint, that's when the CSS effects come into play.
Oh yeah. Breakpoints too.
One other thing we'll do real quick is we want to change our container to width 100% instead of 960. This will make it fluid so that the container is going to fit the full width no matter how wide the browser width is. So if we do that, it doesn't have any effect yet, which is fine. So now we want to center the logo. So if we go back to our style.css, we can find that logo class, and we want to manipulate it. So we'll say .logo margin 0 auto, which will center it. And I believe we'll need to make the width 100%. This will make it stretch across the full width, which will push the navigation down below by default. Let's see if it works. Nope. Oh, I don't have this. That's why. Okay. However, our logo is not centered still. Oh, I know why. We need to target the image inside of the logo. So cut out that margin 0 auto, and we'll target .logo image, and then paste that in there. We might have to give it display block, but we'll see if this will work. Yep, okay. We need to tell the image to display block. If maybe we think this image is a little big for tablets, we could make the image a little bit smaller. So you could say height, let's do like 75%, and then width auto, or you could say 75% here too. Either one works. If you say auto, it will automatically adjust the aspect ratio to well, not pixels, percentage. It will make the aspect ratio match whatever the height or width is. So if we did that, our logo is, did that work? Didn't look like it worked. Maybe we do need to have auto here. There we go. Okay, so one of them does need to be auto. Width or height, either one. Okay, beautiful. Now our navigation, we look in style.css. Our nav, we have float right. Padding top 50 pixels, that might be okay. Instead of float right, we probably want float left. Or we could say float none and center it. So margin 0 auto to center that. In theory, that should work. Nope, it didn't. Oh, I think we need to add width 100%. Let's see if that fixes it. Nope. Why is it not cooperating? Oh, it's that width. Okay. So if we take away the width 100% and make it float left, and we can take out the center pin, that looks okay. If we want to center it, we need to give it a width that's a pixel amount, not a percentage. So if we measured from this point to this point, and then give it a width of that many pixels, and then say margin 0 auto, that will center it. So our height's a little big. You can kind of adjust that, go back and forth to make it look how you want. This is one route. This is a little bit messy because it takes up a lot of space. So if you want, you can comment that out or erase it all, and we will go the other route. So I'm going to erase it. You can just comment it if you want to keep it. What we'll do instead is we'll hide the navigation and add in this menu button. I already wrote the classes for this. So if we do .menu button display block, and then .nav display none. So what this is doing is hiding the navigation completely and revealing this class that was hidden before. This will make this button appear way out here. Right now it's clear over here. This you'll be able to see later when we fix the rest of this bottom part. This is making this a lot wider than it should be. I think if I, on the container class, if I do overflow hidden, that might fix it. Let me just check real quick. Nope, oh, that's right. We'll come back to that later. Okay. Does everybody have that?
No.
I'll let you kind of copy that down.
So what does the add media tag mean?
So that's targeting a specific browser width. It's
That's all
just,
that means.
yeah, that's all it is. Okay, everybody there?
Yeah.
Okay, so we won't have to scroll later, but if you click this button, it will make this mobile navigation appear, which on a phone or on a tablet will be a lot more usable, especially on a phone. So to see how we did that, where is it?
Yeah.
You might have to scroll over all the way here to the right. Later, once we fix these bottom sections, you won't have to scroll. It will appear right here in the corner.
I got something weird effect. The image got a little bit.
Oh, that's weird. Let's take a look at that.
It's not critical.
So if you want to,
Oh, wait. This is what making things target. Yeah, it's fine.
the display
I see.
blocking the dot menu button isn't stuck. That's why. Yeah, the L before the, or the L after the A on line 9.
Spell.
Or line 9.
Yeah, where the text is.
Oh,
on
yeah,
it.
okay.
That might fix it. Is that menu button working for you guys?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Mine just gives a huge amount of white space between the logo and the menu.
That's weird. I wonder if it's because it's using that plugin.
Mine's not too huge, but it makes no difference.
Let me try it with the plugin. That might be what's throwing it off. No, mine's working for some reason. There might be I wonder if you have some kind of error in your.
Is it
CSS somewhere.
there's some
What's your
reason why,
Firefly.
like, so instance, if you like draw the menu and make it big, it keeps both menus. Is there a way that we get rid of that?
Maybe.
I guess
What
that's-
happened?
so
I know I
if
can't
you
use
make it
Firebug with
small
the
and
resizing
show this
thing.
menu, then we extend it, you have both menus. Maybe I
Can you
should
show
try
me?
that. Yeah.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah, I'm guessing
Yeah.
this isn't a real world situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm sure there is a fix. I'd have to think about it though. But yeah, I'm sure there's a way to do that. So if we go to our index.html, I had this mobile menu UL right here. This is the menu that extended out. So in style.css, mobile menu is set to display none. And that JavaScript I mentioned earlier, it's in the JS folder called menu.js. It's essentially saying when you click on the button that has this mobile menu or this toggle menu class, then set the display to block instead of hidden. So pretty simple. And then we're going to hide the normal navigation when that happens. So any questions on that? Okay, let's move on. So that will be good for phone and for tablet. If you wanted it only to appear on phone, we can copy this and paste it down here, and you could have that stack navigation for tablet and then have the menu navigation for phone. That's kind of up to you.
Cool. If you resize it to make it bigger, both of them are there.
Yeah, that's what PJ was just playing with. Okay, so let's move on to this next section right here. Oh, the container is why that isn't working. So I need to re-add that container with 100%. That might fix this width issue. Okay, there we go. Yeah, now you can actually see this menu button here without having to scroll over. So yeah, container needs to be set to width 100%. Okay, so on tablet view we have a couple problems. One, at this point, this H1 tag is way too big, and this paragraph tag has way too much padding on the left and the right. So let's fix both of those. We can reference style.css, see what those classes are called. Call to action H1 is one of them. Actually, the side is coming from just the H1 tag. So if you wanted to, you could copy this whole line, or you can just retype it in. We'll change the font size way down. Let's just do like 36, and the line height way down. We'll do like 42. Font weight can stay the same, so we don't need that. It could be anything you want, as long as it's a little bit bigger than the font size. The line height is the amount of spacing between each line.
So if we take out that font weight, then it uses the previous values?
It'll just use the value that it already has in style.css. So the only thing we need to put on here are attributes that we're changing. All the other attributes will stay the same. So if we do that in theory, there we go. That's a little bit better. We could make it a little bit bigger if we wanted to. Let's say on tablet we want it to be 45, line height of 50. And I'm actually going to switch to Firefox because Chrome won't let you go any narrower than that, whereas in Firefox you can go as narrow as you want, which kind of helps you stimulate the phone better. So on tablet that looks good. On phone, right here, that might be a little bit cramped, so we can make this a little bit smaller once we get to phone. So you can copy that H1 line and paste it in the phone section, and we'll change that to, let's say, 30 and 36. The line height, I typically like to make between 4 and 10 pixels bigger than the font size, depending on where you're using it. You can kind of just guess if you want, or just you can use 5 every time to be safe. So if we have that, you can see that font size change once we get to tablet, and then again once we get to phone. On phone we actually have a problem. This logo is too big, and so it's squishing this menu button down. We can fix that. there's a couple different things you could do. We could just make this logo smaller if we wanted to. Let's do that, see if that fixes it. So in the phone section, we'll do dot logo, image, width, let's do like 40% and then height, auto. That might solve it. Let's check real quick. Oh, that's really small. What might be better is on this menu button to use position absolute instead of float right. So let me know when you're caught up here and we can fix that. That will be in style.css. So in this dot menu button here in the mobile menu section, let's delete this float right and put position absolute. And let's delete the margin top. We'll just change that to just top. And we'll do right 10 pixels. And then we need to add position relative
This is
to
in
the header.
style.css.
This is in style.css.
What is this?
Okay. So if you're a little bit behind, let me know. In header, I added position position relative, and then to this menu button, we replaced float right with position absolute, changed margin top to 43 to just top, and then added a right 10 pixels. Well, let me know when you're caught up to that.
Or
if
did
you have
you
any
just add
questions.
that to?
Header, that's where we're going.
And header.
Header and the other ones?
And the other one are in menu button, and that's under the mobile menu heading. So line 26 and line 13 are where we're making changes. If you've got that, test it out, let me know if it works, and if it doesn't, let me know.
It looks good to me.
We're getting rid of float.
Yeah, we're getting rid of float right on dot menu button. That kind of worked. That doesn't look great.
This might be. I'm gonna go use Firebug and see what the padding is somewhere around.
Yeah,
here.
there's something that's adding a padding. Oh, the top is just probably really high. We could probably change that to maybe like 20. Let me just test it real quick on mine and see how it does. Okay, for me it seems to be working. 40 was actually probably fine. Yeah. And then, yeah, so I don't know if you have the same result, but it seems to be working here. Let's position that correctly. I don't want to spend too much time on that. We can come back to that later after this is over if you want to get that right. Just because we have 15 minutes left, I want to cover a couple things. So. All right, so if we come back to this view, our paragraph is way over there. If we look at that class in style.css, this is line 31 called action P. We can copy that whole line and paste it in our tablet section. We can erase color and text align. Padding is what we want to change. And it has massive padding on the left and the right where it says 260. So we can change both of those to just 20 should be fine. And that's all we should need.
So it's 20, 20, 25, 20.
Yep.
Okay.
And that makes this look a lot nicer. On tablet it works fine, and on phone it looks good too. Okay, any questions so far? We might not get to everything on this page, but this next section right here is the most important. After we finish that, you'll probably be able to do both of these sections on your own. So, a couple things here. If you look at this page, there's two columns. This is a column, and this is a column, and then there's 3 rows. This is a little bit tricky because it's staggered. So by default, HTML will render whatever is listed first on top. So for example, if we go to style.css and scroll to the About section, actually let's go to index and go to the About section. Each of these container blocks, there's 3 of them, is referencing one of these rows. So you kind of see how there's a container here that has an icon and the text block. Then we have the next one, icon, text block, icon, text block. Each of those corresponds to one of these rows. If you notice, on each of these sections, we have the image first and then the text below. By default, HTML will show the image first and then the text block because it will go in order. However, in this case, we've told the image or the text to float left and the image to float right, except for in this middle section. So in index.html, I've added this middle class, the middle one. And if you look at that class in the CSS, it's these last 3 lines right here, lines 41 through 43, where instead of the text floating left, I reverse it to float right, and the image floating right, I reverse it to float left. And then added this margin to kind of add this padding in between these
So
sections.
if we want to reverse that back on the
Yeah.
outline.
So for example, if I were to comment out these 2 lines, it would be like this. The reason we have to do that is because once we go responsive, it's going to go in order. We want the image to always appear on top, whereas if we had staggered this, the image would go below on this section. So it would go image, text, text, image, image, text, which would look funny. That might make a little bit more sense once we actually do this responsive stuff. So, back to our responsive.css, we'll change the class to, what did I name them? Let's see. There's feature text and feature image. So dot feature text, we'll change width to 100%, and dot feature image with 100%. A shortcut for this, if you wanted to, you could copy that, put a comma, and then we could erase the second line completely if they both have the exact same attributes. Something to keep in mind. So, what this is going to do is make each of those fill the entire column, which will push them on top of each other. So, in theory, if that worked, once we changed this, it did work. So, see how that made this image take the full width, which pushed down this to the next row. That's a core principle for doing responsive design, where you're collapsing multiple columns into single columns. Does that kind of make sense how that happened?
Yeah, I think so.
And since we had this image on top here in the HTML, that put this image first. Whereas if we had put it second, then it would be below this, and that would cause problems later. That's a little bit more complex and only really relevant when you have staggered columns. These little things are where responsive can get kind of tricky. Otherwise, responsive is fairly straightforward if you work in columns.
Since the margin on the left is don't text the hook very much.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's do that. First off, we want to make these images centered. So let's target those in our responsive.
Feature images.
Yep, dot feature image space ing. We'll want to make the image display block because by default images are inline, and then give it a margin of 0. If that works, that should Yep, center our images. And then we want to give that text a little bit of padding. So we'll target, let's just target H2, and we'll say padding 0, 20 pixels. 20 pixels is kind of a safe margin. That can do whatever you want. We could make it a little bit bigger on tablet and then smaller on phone. In fact, let's do that. Let's make the padding 50 on tablet, but on phone, we'll tighten it up a bit and make it 20. We'll also target that paragraph link, so about P. Same thing, we can copy this. And we'll make it a little bit tighter on phone. And 30. Okay. That didn't work. I guess we didn't target that correctly. We might have to put, oh, I put pound there. That's fine.
About that.
Those might look better centered. It could go either way. If you wanted to change it, we could say X line centered. That might look a little bit better. I kind of prefer it. It could go either way though. In phone view, you can see how that padding, oh, did it not? Let's change that.
For some reason my images aren't centered.
See ya. Your what?
My images aren't centered.
Let me take a look at
Here.
Okay, so the difference is there's a class called .featureImage, and then we have to target and image it inside that class.
Ah.
So we have to do a new line and do .featureImage, and then space, and then copy the display block and mark 0 auto lines there. Any questions so far? Is this working for everyone? Great. It's pretty cool, huh?
You're right about Firefox. So.
Yeah, I don't know why Chrome has a minimum browser width. It's kind of strange.
There's a lot of applications for Windows too.
So, one thing, if you'll notice, this About section in our style.CSS doesn't have a set height. That's allowing this to be fluid. Whereas if we had a set height and we changed this to here, a lot of this content would overflow. Since we don't have a set height, we just have this padding, 100 pixels on the top and the bottom. That lets our site be very fluid. So that no matter what, we have kind of this nice padding, and it's going to work no matter what the width is.
The teams don't have a height either, but they overflow.
Do they? We might have some problems in that we'll have to fix there. We have about 4 minutes, so we can keep going, or does anyone have specific questions about different use cases for making responsive things? Anything in particular that seems like it could be tricky? Okay, oh, we can kind of look here. Yeah, it seems to be working on mine, so.
Does Chrome on your screen not let you go down to the phone? Just curious.
I went, well, maybe I went too narrow, but it seems to
That's weird.
Oh,
I can take a look at it after.
One way to get the extra. I just saw a way to get the extra menu to disappear when you make it bigger again. You can make have a min-size
Is it
media.
really that narrow?
Yeah,
for
yeah, that's an option. So, using the same principle you just did,
Properly when
the
it is.
team section should be really simple, loan section should be simple, this should be simple too.
Yeah, well,
The form has a set width, let's see, 430. So if we were to copy that and change the width to just 100%, and I think The inputs have the same thing. Yeah, width of 398. You can copy that as well. The width in the text area. This will make our form responsive as well, in theory. I see it.
It's some text there, right?
Yeah. On the tablet version, it went to 100%.
Yeah, and maybe on tablet version that doesn't look great, so you can kind of play with that. Maybe you only want to add that once you get down to phone view. It seems like it's a little bit long for some reason.
It's because you have, when you get down to that small size, it looks like it gets a patch.
Oh yeah, that's why. So maybe instead of 100%, we could say 80%. And let's move these down to only on phone. There we go. That doesn't look great, but you get the idea. Now you can play with that. Footers typically I'll just hide, so I can just say dot footer display none. On phone views, I use that quite often. Anything that wouldn't be useful on a phone, I would hide. For example, this team section might be a little bit too long. I could hide maybe the images and just have the text links, or hide the entire section if I feel it's not useful for a phone view. It's kind of up to you to use your best judgment. But those are the basics for doing responsive. If you do it this way, it's not that difficult really. Fairly straightforward. So for next week, we have two options. We can continue with more code things if there's any gaps you feel like we have, or we can jump into Photoshop and start working on design and come back to code later. If I were to have you build a site, what gaps do you have as far as the coding side go? Or do you feel pretty confident that you can make it?
I could
With
do
the
everything.
CSS,
with
yes.
design.
With JavaScript and jQuery would be.
Yeah, JavaScript and jQuery we probably won't cover here. We'll use them, but not we're not actually cover. What were you saying, TJ?
I could probably do everything about JavaScript.
Okay. Any other big gaps? Really, HTML and CSS are fairly straightforward. Once you get some basic principles down, you can figure out most of it. The trick is learning an efficient way to do things, and hopefully this is an efficient method. So with that said, do you want to jump into design next week? Or do you want to keep doing code? Design?
Design.
Okay. Alright, so in that case, you will need Photoshop.
You don't care how we get this.
Yeah, I don't care what dark methods you may use, as long as you have it. For those that can't get it, I think Dean can probably work something out to get it, or I can bring an extra laptop with it on. Just give me a heads up so I know ahead of time. Worst case scenario, you could just.
Yeah.
We don't want to use GIMP. GIMP is usable, but for what we want to do, it won't work.
Gotcha.
Our goal next week is to be able to build something like what we just coded. So, for example, there's a couple of different goals that we'll have. One, how to build something like this from scratch. And two, once we have it built, how to use Photoshop to export all these different images and slice it up so that you can save what you need to. That will be useful. Even if you're a developer not going to be a designer, just knowing that skill is very useful with working with designers. And a lot of these principles would be good to know when they do that are developers. So yeah, be ready with Photoshop. If you need help getting that, let me know and we'll work something out. So, all right, see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Zarin.
I believe Brandon just sent you an email.
Okay. We might have another person.
Cool, great. Next week is actually a great point for people that haven't been here before, since we're just starting fresh with Photoshop. So,
One question. The
Sure.
app media, is that, what type of CSS did that come
He
from?
went through all
it's
the
something newer.
reviews with Adobe.
To be honest, it's probably 3. I don't think it was a part of 2.
But he has, decades of experience.
Oh, that's great.
So he came back to Weaver.
Well, we're happy to have him. Should probably help make the classes better.
He's incredible.
still having that problem with that talk. Would you do me a favor and just send me your,
Yeah.
anybody that worked, anybody's who worked, just want to look at the responsive, I guess.
Yeah.
I was having problems
I
getting
think
it
it's
from tablet view to, whatchamacallit view, the mobile view.
Uh-huh.
I was having problems, it would get to a certain spot and then it would stay at that width,
Really?
like the image and things like that. So if you could send me the or
Yeah.
send us the CSS that we just finished,
Uh-huh.
and I'll test it on like my other machine,
Yeah.
the one that actually does the heavy
A
lifting.
real machine.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
What's fun is when you push the site live and actually test it on devices, you can get a better feel for how it actually works. Yeah, and if any of you are working on code on the side, whether it's this or your own project, feel free to come early or stay after and I can help you out with whatever questions you have. So.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
That'd be
Yeah,
really
just,
good.
if you want to come early, just give me a heads up and then I'll be ready for you. But I'm usually here early either way if you want to just come. So.
Yeah, because we're both working on big
Yeah, I
projects.
saw what you were working on, which looked really cool.
Yeah, too bad we're starting all over.
Yeah.
Those are all throwaway prototypes, and well, actually, mine was probably the closest to what they wanted, but it was
Uh-huh.
one. It wasn't my fault. It's a design. It's a code fault.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of a feature that got left out of the code
Oh, gotcha.
that therefore the prototype didn't support.
Yeah, what class is this for?
For 3750.
Okay, which class is that?
It's software engineering 2.
Okay.
It's just kind of a project where we